Hello and welcome to the Actuaries Institute CareerView podcast. I'm Susan Louie, convener of the Actuaries Institute's Risk Management Practice Committee. Risk management is crucial to any organisation and requires complex skills that an actuary can bring. How does an actuary ascend the corporate ladder to become a Chief Risk Officer of a company? Today, I'm joined by Gavin Pearce, Chief Risk Officer of iCare, one of the largest general insurance providers in Australia, who has created a unique title for himself as Chief Risky Dude. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you, Susan.
In this episode, we're talking about the path towards becoming a CRO. What are the necessary educational requirements, experience, and what is the view like from the top of the risk management world? Gavin, can you share with us a little bit about what a CRO does on a daily basis?
I think for me, the thing I like about being a CRO is that it's never the same day twice. It's very broad in terms of who I'm talking to, what I'm talking about. You know, I could be talking to the people at reception about physical security and safety, or I could be talking to the board about our investment strategies, or where things are going from an insurance risk perspective. I could be talking to our regulators or Treasury. It's so varied, and that's what I love about the role.
It certainly sounds like a great and really broad role, Gavin. I mean, so tell us a bit about your career path to becoming the CRO. How did it get to here, where you are, Chief Risky Dude?
I guess for me, the main thing for me was I followed what I loved doing. So when I was little, I loved solving problems, which sort of led me into mathematics. I just liked solving maths problems. And so that after high school, I went to university and studied statistics. And in New Zealand, I didn't even know what an actuary was when I started university. I just knew I wanted to study mathematics. And it wasn't until I was 4.5 years through university that an actuary from AMP came and did a sort of an employer day at Waikato University in Hamilton, New Zealand, where I was. And I thought, wow, that sounds like an interesting career. I'd done some accounting and economics at high school. Obviously, I was doing the statistics. And so the next year I found myself applying for a job and getting a role at Tower in Wellington. So I moved there, and this is showing my age, 1992. I moved to Wellington and started a role as an actuarial analyst working for Tower. And it was at that point I had to start working and studying full-time through the Actuaries Institute here in Australia. So it took me 8 years to qualify as an actuary through the Institute whilst working full-time in New Zealand. So that was the start. I qualified as an actuary. I sat my last exam, 2000. Came over to Australia and for a few days and did the professionalism course down in Wollongong back in those days. And then it was at that point I thought, well, okay, I want to do more than just the actuarial sort of side of things. I want to get involved in broader business issues. And so then I set about doing an MBA. And I did that through the Henley Management College in the UK, which again was, working full-time, studying part-time, and that took me 3.5 years. And one of the things, because I was deliberately trying to do the MBA as something completely different, and I guess trying to engage the right brain, having used the left brain for most of my life, my dissertation or my thesis was on employee motivation, so really trying to understand people. So that was the MBA, and I think 2008 I was the chief actuary at ACC in New Zealand. I'd got to a point, I'd been working for ACC for 8 years, and I was really like, what next for me? And I sort of, I guess, felt I'd hit the sort of the top of the ceiling, if you like, in New Zealand, and moved here to Australia, and again kept working in the actuarial field. And it wasn't until 4 years ago I got a call from a recruiter saying, are you interested in getting into risk management? And I think my response was, yes, but I'm not sure I'm ready. And he said, look, Zurich's looking for a new chief risk officer. They want someone who has got an actuarial background, and they want someone that can grow into the role. They didn't need someone that was going to hit the ground running. And I thought, well, that sounds that sounds exactly like me. I knew very little about risk management. Unfortunately, I did share that my concerns and my thoughts with my wife, who then decided to tell a good friend of ours that Gavin's starting as a CRO at Zurich the following week and knows nothing about risk management. which would have been fine apart from the fact the person was Kate Bible who worked at APRA at the time. So there was that sort of one of those kind of awkward moments. But I think I've since realised anyone that says they know everything that there is to know about risk management is fooling themselves and others. It's certainly an evolving area. But that's how I got into risk management and brings me to where I am today.
Yeah, here. I mean, it's a journey that you can never get to the end of, really, in risk management. It is so broad. Gavin, I mean, I just wanted to pick up on what you said. There was part of your background that was actually quite interesting, which is your dissertation, which you did on people. How has that helped you, do you think, in what you do today? I
think for me, certainly the approach I'm taking to risk management is a very people-focused approach. I think, my belief, and you're seeing it now in terms of, APRA's focus on risk culture. Wayne Byers has come out and talking about incentives and, again, people and what motivates them and how to motivate them and align, their motivations with those of your policyholders and so forth. So for me, I think it was the challenge of understanding the complexities of humans. I'd understood the complexity of statistics, and now it was moving into something more complex, and really understanding that people are both the greatest asset and the weakest link when it comes to any organisation. And in fact, we are all in the industry of people. We work with people. We work for people. We produce products or deliver services to people. So to understand people, I think, is at the heart of everything that we do.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to take, and I don't know whether many people know about it, but they will soon, because you won recently the Risk Manager of the Year award from the RIMIA, Risk Management Institute of Australasia, and you recently hosted a session on building a risk management framework. Can you provide us with details of any innovations you've developed as a result of your significant experience in the space? Well,
I'm not sure I have significant experience. So I think one of the things for me really is just that open mindset and desire to learn about the new profession of risk management I find myself in, and I think coming to it, as I say, I've only really been formally in risk management for 4 years, and I think coming to it with fresh eyes and sort of challenging the status quo and saying, well, why do you do that? Why do you use a heat map? And certainly coming from an actuarial background and understanding probability distributions and distributions of likelihood and severity, and to see all of that valuable rich information disintegrated into one dot on a heat map is almost brings you to tears. So it's things like that, and so saying, well, there must be something better. And when thinking about how to report to the board or our audit and risk committee, putting myself in the shoes of the board members and saying, well, what would they want to see? What's important to them? So I think, again, just taking that people focus and not being afraid to ask the dumb questions, seek clarification, sort of poke your nose in all around the place, have that sort of inquisitive mind. That's my general approach. So I'm not sure I've done anything particularly innovative. It's just been doing what feels right, I think, and not being tied to historical tools and that people have used in risk management for years and years.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say at the moment it's such a learning experience and things are changing so rapidly. So I think even though it may be hard to say what innovations have I done, but just I think being part of the industry, which is quite an early industry or a young industry, I think, compared to some of the more traditional actuarial practices, I think just means that we're part of that innovation itself, like going across the industry. We can see it now. You mentioned that in terms of culture, APRA, and other regulatory movements in that space. Gavin, I mean, in risk management, you've mentioned the board, you've mentioned the regulator, you've mentioned people, of course, in your company. How do you deal with the requirements, I suppose, and the expectations of all those different parties, because it is a very broad range of stakeholders that you're dealing with?
I think for me it's just treating people as people first, and not getting caught up in any sort of hierarchy. It's, for me, you never know where that next little gem's going to come from, and as I say, it might be talking to a board member or it might be talking to someone in the mailroom, and if you close your mind or don't avail yourself of the opportunities to talk to a broad range of people, I think you're doing yourself, your job, your profession a disservice. So for me, it's just, get out there and talk to people. Be, the chief risky dude. I mean, the number of people who have commented on that and it incites a conversation. It shows me as someone that just wants to get out there and talk to people. I'm not the chief no risk officer. That's the approach.
And, just the next question, I think this is something that our young actuaries out there in particular might be interested in. Gavin, what other key skills do you think actuaries will require if they're looking for career in risk management?
Mm-hmm. I think probably the first thing to unpick in that question is, what does a career in risk management look like? And I think for me, as the CRO of an organisation, what I'm trying to incite across the whole of my organisation is for everyone to think in a very risk-aware way and make risk-aware decisions and, what we call intelligent risk-taking. So, you can be involved at all different sorts of levels. You don't have to be the CRO. I mean, you can still get involved in risk management from a role within an actuarial team or a product team or an underwriting team or whatever. But if you're wanting to, have more involvement in risk management, I would say, as an actuary, you would be expected to have all of the technical skills, and so it's really those soft skills. It's the the ability to build relationships, to show empathy, to influence people, to earn their trust. Because if you're not trusted, then people won't share that information with you, and then you can be blindsided by things quite easily.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably those skills are needed in some of the more traditional actuarial fields. I would say now even. But I guess what you're saying is that just because of the very broad range of issues and with the stakeholders that you deal with, those skills are even more important in a risk management role. Is that right?
Yep. I think for me, as a risk manager, I'm expected to know a little bit about everything. And so I guess I'm more of a sort of a connector and having that helicopter view of the organisation and sort of say, well, okay, if something happens, over here in the IT area, what impact might that have on our customers or our operational efficiency or, that could impact us in a financial way. So being able to connect all the dots, so to see the whole picture. And I think you can only do that if you take that sort of helicopter view and don't get caught down in the weeds. And certainly, I've had people ask me, well, you spend all this time qualifying as an actuary and now you've kind of thrown it all away. And I'd say, well, I haven't thrown it away. It's one set of skills in my bag of tricks. I just have to add more skills into the bag.
Yeah, completely get that. I mean, because coming from risk management itself, I mean, it's the actuarial skills and actuarial areas are a very, very important area, clearly, in an insurance organisation. But it is but one part of the organisation, whereas I think your role pretty much spans across all the different areas of the organisation. So, what makes you stay awake at night as the chief risky dude, Gavin?
I guess for me, the things that I think about a lot is, how do I continue to grow and develop myself, my team? How do I meet the, ever-changing expectations and needs of the business? How do I keep on top of the changing risk profile of the organisation? And that can come from things that are changing internally. At iCare, we've gone through a massive IT transformation, and then people and processes. So, not sweating the small stuff and really focused on the big stuff. And then there's everything that's going on in the external environment, and that's everything from what's happening in the economy, what's happening with cybersecurity, cyber risk, those sorts of things. The Royal Commission, that can have knock-on effects in the broader context than just the financial services. And working for a government agency that is an insurance-like entity, we'd certainly be looking for lessons learned from the Royal Commission as well. So. Just got to keep your mind on an eye on the ball and looking everywhere for where that next both risk and opportunity might come from.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to look at it. Not just focus on the risks and the downside, but also focusing on the upsides. Time for one last question, I suppose. I suppose of you too. As I said, that risk management is really an emerging field of practice. There's not many actuaries involved in that area. Any last words of advice for other actuaries, be they young or older, who might want to follow in your footsteps? That can be personal as well as professional advice.
Sure. I think just get out there and talk to people. If you have an interest in risk management, then talk to risk managers, talk to people in your organisation, talk to other risk managers. I've actually spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, as some people may have seen. I've actually set up a group on LinkedIn called Sydney Risk Professionals. That's open to anyone to join, and I just use that as a way to communicate with other people within the Sydney area. And we get together about once every 3 months. People can certainly come along to that. I mean, if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn and share thoughts and ideas, happy for them to do that. Or point them in the direction of other people if they happen to live outside of Sydney. So I think, just get out there, talk to people, find out more about it, find out how you can get involved, as I say, within the role that you've got. And then if you want to take that further and get into a risk management role, as you say, it's an emerging field and profession, and there are a lot of people hiring. So, just roll up your sleeves and get into it.
And I think that's about all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Gavin. It's great to hear from someone in a Chief Risk Officer position and so close to the latest thinking in risk management. So thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
And audience, we hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Do look out for career articles on Actuaries Digital and listen to the other episodes in our CareerView podcast. As always, we wish you well on your actuarial career journey. I'm Susan Louie. Good afternoon.